Welcome to the second and final lecture of the year, where we will be discussing the political genius that was Abraham Lincoln and what I call the relentless emancipator. Today I will be giving a very brief outline into why and how President Lincoln issued his famous Emancipation Proclamation. There is no question that Lincoln is the most written about person in American history. The reason for this is that Lincoln was the president during the most bloody 4 years in American history. He's the only president to have his whole time spent in office under a war. It also could be for his famous Emancipation Proclamation we're going to talk about today. First, let's begin by discussing what the Emancipation Proclamation is and what it actually did for African Americans in the United States. The Emancipation Proclamation freed all the slaves in the rebelling states and made them free citizens. It was issued on the basis that it would cripple the Southern economy as well as free a group of people who had been in bondage for well over 2 centuries. We as historians must ask, is Lincoln this great emancipator everyone thought he was? Was he this godlike human born to walk the earth so he could free the slaves? History tells us no, and so did Lincoln. As he says, the central act of my administration and the great event of the 19th century was a relatively slow, though continuous one. Here we see a depiction of Antietam, the bloodiest day in history, and the tipping point for Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. This battle, which occurred September 17th of 1862, was the Union victory Lincoln needed to issue his famous edict. He had to wait for a victory so the Emancipation Proclamation wouldn't be seen as desperate. Now, Lincoln didn't always believe in emancipation for the blacks. He was more of a colonizationalist, like his political idol Henry Clay. Clay believed in a gradual end to slavery with the idea of colonization after the blacks were freed. These thoughts were paralleled by Lincoln for most of his political career, and this was also the first step in Lincoln's emancipation process. The next step occurred when Lincoln jumped to the Republican Party around the mid-1850s. Lincoln also supplanted Clay with Thomas Jefferson as his source for political wisdom. He referred to Jefferson's belief in natural equality repeatedly, and however, he thought it was impossible to imagine a biracial society in the U.S. and wanted to separate the white and black races. In August of 1862, Lincoln met with a black delegation to discuss the idea of colonization. Historian Eric Foner claims this to be one of the most controversial moments in Lincoln's time as president. He spoke with them about the white prejudice and that they would never be truly free in America. He was committed more strongly than ever to the idea of colonization as a sure solution of African American complications. Lincoln and Senator Douglas from Illinois took part in a series of debates across their state in 1858. Although Douglas was seen as the winner of the debates, it led to the prominence of Abraham Lincoln in the political sphere, as well as ended any hopes Senator Douglas had of being president. Lincoln went toe-to-toe with the experienced Douglas and won over many voters that he would later need in a couple of years. Eric Foner is the DeWitt Clinton Professor of History at Columbia University and is the author of many award-winning books on the Civil War and Reconstruction era. Many of his works were used to influence this project in a paper I'm working on in historiography, and a selection is on the next slide. The books listed below are instrumental in this project. The first, The Fiery Trial, deals with Lincoln's struggles with American slavery. The next, Our Lincoln, which is the middle picture, features essays from top historians on how we see Lincoln today through his actions of his own time period. And the book on the left, Forever Free, deals with the consequences of emancipation in Reconstruction America. Next, we come to Harold Holzer, who is another historian on the Civil War era who was very instrumental in this project. He's one of the leading authorities on Abraham Lincoln as well as political culture in the Civil War era. 3 of his works, 2 of which are on the emancipation process, and 1 is a speech at Cooper Union, that were very helpful during all this, are featured on the next page. Emancipating Lincoln is about the Emancipation Proclamation, its historical context, and the memory. The middle book features Lincoln's speech at Cooper Union during the Lincoln-Douglas debates that is claimed to be the speech that escalated him to the presidency. And the last book, titled The Emancipation Proclamation, outlines the effects of the act on American culture, both politically and racially. Father Abraham is a groundbreaking book where historian Richard Striner takes a new approach by saying Lincoln always wanted to end slavery but could not given the circumstances. He had to be a crafty politician and cloak some of his anti-slavery ideas to keep the Union intact. Striner concludes that Lincoln's gift of manipulation and politics helped him end slavery altogether. Along with these secondary sources, I use these two collections of Lincoln's thoughts and words on war, race, and slavery. Both of these books show how Lincoln dealt with both the race and slavery issue, as well as how he dealt with politics during the Civil War. Mixing the two spheres together could be trouble, but Lincoln was just the man to steer the Union through this crisis. The legacy of Lincoln's proclamation is vast. After the Civil War, there were 3 new amendments added, and those were Amendments 13 through 15. Amendment 13 in 1865 abolished slavery. Amendment 14 in 1866 defined citizenship, and Amendment 15 in 1869 gave the right to vote to African Americans. Another important impact was the Union's decision to let blacks fight for the Union. Pictured here is the 54th Massachusetts, led by Robert Gould Shaw. Blacks in the Union Army earned their due partly because of the 54th effort at Fort Wagner. Up until that point, the Union used black soldiers as a labor force because whites believed that blacks were inferior on the battlefield. On the left, we see an iconic picture of slaves and the damage that could be done from the lashings of a master. The other picture is one where slaves were picking cotton in the field. This reliance on cotton and monoculture in the South is ultimately what kept African Americans shackled for so many years, and ultimately what led to the Civil War. Here we would see a wanted poster from a Southerner who believes that Abraham Lincoln was acting like a king or tyrant. The South chose to secede because they knew the election of Lincoln would be the end of slavery. The irony in this poster is they believe Lincoln is the one who is treasonous, when 7 Southern states seceded less than a month after Lincoln took office. And finally, we have a famous quote from Lincoln. The essence of this is Lincoln's political genius. His feelings of ending slavery aside, Lincoln was a master tactician. He gauged public opinion and wanted to ensure he could save the Union before he freed the slaves and crippled the Southern economy. No other president could have done it better than Lincoln.